I might have been the last fan to speak to Kobe Bryant before he passed. It was January 25th, 2020. I happened to run into Kobe and I filmed it, which I'm going to show you here in a second. But here's how it happened. If you know my man Gary Vee, he says you should document, not create, right? And so I'm in the habit of filming all of my life and documenting that. And this particular day, January 25th, 2020, I was in a food court in Newport Beach and I was filming my family. And the reason I was doing that is because a friend of mine, Brian Galad, he's a LinkedIn influencer, he had a post that was going viral. And so I was texting back and forth with him, trying to understand what was going on. And so as I'm sitting there with my family, I start filming the craziness of having 4 kids and all of this other stuff. And all of a sudden, I noticed in front of me, coming down the escalator, it took me a moment to realize who it was, but it was Kobe Bryant. And that's what I'm gonna show you here. And then let me tell you about what happened after I filmed this and went to talk to him.
Fun.
Yeah.
Kobe.
The famous basketball player, Kobe Bryant, the Lakers.
I thought you said Kobe Bryant. A lot of people wrote.
So as I was filming that, what you just saw, I literally felt, guys, a kick. I don't know if you want to call it spiritual, supernatural, whatever it was. I remember telling my wife, I'm gonna kick myself for the rest of my life if I don't go and talk to Kobe. I got up, my daughter, she was probably 7 or 8 at the time, she got up and she ran after me and she said, Dad, who is this? And I said, oh my gosh, this is the greatest basketball player of all time. There's literally no one like him. So I got to where he was sitting. He had just gotten some gelato with his little daughter. And what I remember was he was so completely focused on his little girl, just daddy and his little girl, like there was nobody else around him. I went up to him and I said, hey, Kobe, you're amazing, man. I want you to know that. Thank you for all you've done. And he turned to me, he looked at me, and he extended his billion-dollar hand, and he shook my hand. He said, hey, man, thanks. I appreciate that. And I remember I could feel the calluses on his hand as he was shaking my hand. And I turned to his little girl who was sitting there, and I remember this because it was odd. I was thinking afterwards, I shouldn't have done that, but I remember touching her lightly on the shoulder, and I said, hey, you having a good time with Daddy? And she looked at me, and she smiled, and she giggled, and she kept slurping her ice cream. And so after I was done talking to her, I turned back to Kobe, and I said, all right, man, have a wonderful evening. I don't want to bother you. I just wanted to let you know how much you mean to us. And he said, you too, man. You have a great night. And that was it. So I texted my friends. I'm like, you won't believe I just ran into Kobe. It was surreal to have run into him, but even more surreal the next morning. The tragedy that happened, all of those families that were impacted with Kobe. Gary Vee, if you're watching this, I know you wish you had been able to reach out to Kobe before he passed. I just want you to know, Gary, in some small way, you brought me to that moment where I was able to capture this. Maybe I was the last fan to speak to Kobe. I don't know. But I sure as heck won't forget that encounter. And I hope it encourages you to hug a loved one and never ever forget, friends, that life is short. God bless.